Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order and welcome you all tonight. The Jail and Law Enforcement Courts Committee meeting is called to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Agenda's passed. First item on the agenda is the juvenile detention report. Is Ms. Kendrick Sexton here tonight? She is not here. Does anybody have any questions on the report? And if so, we'll pass them on and get them answered. Justice Harbison.
I just noticed that our population in the juvenile detention center is up quite a bit. And I think we need to be concerned about that.
Any other comments? All right, thank you. Item 4, the Enforcement Activity Report, Chief Deputy Jay Cantrell.
There's the man.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The enforcement report, nothing big to report. In September, calls for service down a few ticks, animal calls down a few ticks. Happy to see that. We hopefully cooler weather will keep those calls down. Had a big motorcycle rally last weekend, and it caused no difficulties for the sheriff's office. I think the city had a few arrests, but no more than normal. So I think overall it was a good rally and didn't cause us any trouble. There are a few campsites that are located out in the county, but none of those required us to have to go out there and take any action. So we're thankful for that. I'd be happy to answer any questions about the enforcement side of the house. Anybody has any?
Justice Lemming?
We just had a couple killed this year on that deal.
Yes, we
In
had
Washington County.
2 fatality accidents in Washington County. One out on 303 near the county line going toward War Eagle, and then one out here on 112 and 49.
Yep. Thank you.
Justice Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess this question is appropriate for you. Is it about time that our contract with Madison County is up for renewal? Do you remember when that renews?
Do not remember the exact date on that,
Okay.
but I will find out.
I'll bet somebody here tonight will
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next is the Detention Activity Report, Major Densler.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Like the Chief Deputy said, the cool weather has helped a little. You see our numbers are down just a little bit, not much, as you look down through our statistics. But as of today, we still had a high count of 725, and took a snapshot right before we left, we still had 13 to book. So even though the numbers might be down just a little, everything's still in a crisis mode. The bail project that they've talked about's got out 47 people. They helped a little bit. And Stan's going to give a report here in a minute. You know, everybody's helping at every angle they can. Then for the pretrial report, as you see, follows just about the same as always, but for AP Harbison, they were down 364. But the numbers are down a little bit. So, you know, we also had they had hauled, I believe, 30 people to Arkansas Department of Corrections the last 2 weeks. That helped our numbers a little bit. So, kind of go from there. And I say we're still in crisis mode. We still have 70 on the floor, 16 are women. And it kind of fluctuates back and forth between the men and the women. That's all I have. But have any questions?
Justice Harbison.
how many, you said you took, 35 South? How many do we still have of Arkansas Department of Correction in the jail?
Right around 120.
120, okay. I mean, someone that is, asked me that, and I said, well, okay, now we get paid $32 a day for those?
$30.
$30,
Yes.
okay. All right. Is there, why do we hold so many?
They're on a rotation, the state is, and they contact every county, and when it's your turn, you can bring down, they'll tell you, we can take this many. They'll call us one afternoon, say, we need 20 down the next morning. But part of that 120, let me back up just a little bit, is the 90-day, the 90 days that they spend in jail, they put in there, and Act 570, that's part of that number too. That's
Okay.
everybody that's actually ADC pays us for.
Okay, let me ask you a question, because I think this person was wrong, but I'll ask. They said that the days served in the county jail did not count toward their sentence when they are in prison, that those days don't count.
When it first starts, no, it didn't come off the front end until they actually get down there. They get credit for that on the back end of the sentence, but not on the front end. So when we have somebody for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, their time don't really start as far as counting down their sentence. But on the very end of the sentence, they'll take that off.
Okay, so it is eventually taken off.
It does help a little, but not a bunch.
So they don't take all the days off.
No, because once you get down to the Arkansas Department of Corrections, they start getting good time, and they get these different classes, and usually you can divide that sentence by about 6.
Right, okay.
Is a kind of an average. So they don't start getting any of that till they actually get there and earn them classes.
Okay, so they have to be, set good examples before they get that counted off. I mean, if they are rowdy or something, they're not gonna get that. They'll do the jail, county jail time plus their prison time.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Justice Lemon.
When you say divided by 6, I'm a country boy, explain that to me.
Well, when they start out, get down there, they get classified, and they work and get this good time where they may get a month for every 2 months they're there. Depends on what class. There's several different classes that they can work up to where they don't get in trouble. And your best detainee or best inmate, I guess, when I go down there, is close to 6 for 1 if you divide it out.
Okay, thank you.
And then
Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any chance you know when the contract with Madison County renews?
Yes, ma'am. It's first of the year.
First of the year?
Them in Fayetteville.
Okay. Somebody remind me if I forget that, okay? We don't have any choice about these state prisoners, right? If we have space, we have to take them, but we don't have space.
Yes, we have to. They're sentenced here and come
We-
to our jail, yes.
Okay, so we have to take them.
Yes,
Are any of them sleeping on the floor?
probably so. I'd have to go look and see. I mean, it's
Okay, but
it's
they're
not.
treated the same as,
Yes, yes. That we do, once they get committed, they do get to come out and be a trustee and help mop, clean, wash, and do that stuff, but they're all in a committed block.
and federal prisoners. Is everybody always treated the same?
Yes.
They pay a little better, as I remember.
Yeah, they pay double what the state does and then some. Yes, everybody is in the same boat down there. There's no special class that doesn't have to sleep on the floor.
Okay. If we were to stop taking Madison County prisoners, I assume they would find some place to put them.
I guess they'd have to. I mean, they'd go to Crawford County or everywhere they'd have to go, but, we only hold 22, 23, 25.
I know, but
For
that'd
what-
be
for-
that many fewer sleeping on the floor, maybe.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
That turns into about $500,000 too.
That's,
I realize they paid the same rate as the feds, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if they arrest somebody out of Benton County, do they eventually have to go to Benton County, or we take them on because of our contract?
No,
If the
if
warrants
Benton
had
County
been-
was a Benton County charge, they would go straight to Benton
They
County.
would, okay.
Only
good.
Madison County charges.
Only Madison County, that was what I wanted to know. Thank,
Justice Lemming,
I don't know.
you done?
Yeah.
Justice Harbison.
Another question is someone, like a judge sentence someone and they just give them probation. And so they're out on probation and they break their probation and they're arrested again and brought into the jail. Does the state pay for that, or is that a non-paying prisoner?
That's a non-paying because of probation, they never went down to the Arkansas Department of Corrections.
How many of those people do we have in jail?
I'd have to look, I think that number's up, maybe around 40. I'd have to look at the census, but just a ballpark figure.
Okay. I mean, I thought once they were sentenced that the state took that over, but I was told different, so I just wanted to check and make sure. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Justice Deakins.
Stratify this population again for me, clarify. You said at any given time, average, we hold how many from Madison County?
Usually it's around probably 20 to 25, maybe 18 to 25.
How many federal prisoners do we hold at any given time? Ballpark.
Oh, it ranges probably from 65 to 80.
Okay.
This last year, used to it was only 40 or 50.
And so then if I'm making up the rest of that population, it'll be pretrial and then the state prisoners. Is that correct?
Yes.
I got you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Justice Madison.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up on something that JP Ann Harbison asked. If you have somebody in jail for breaking their probation, are they eligible to bond out?
Yes, they get a bond.
They can
Because
get a bond.
they'll either have a new charge to usually violate that, and then they'll get a bond, and they'll go and get it all took care of.
Okay.
If the prosecutors, sees fit.
How long does that usually take? If somebody's messed up their probation and you pull them in jail, how long before they can bond out? Are we talking hours or days?
They'll get a bond the next day. If there's not one, they'll have one the next day when we send all the paperwork to the prosecutor every night. They go see the judge, and then that afternoon, we get all of our bonds set.
Okay, good answer, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir. Whoa. Hang on.
I'm just trying to understand the population. So to clarify, we've got Madison County inmates, which are around 25. Federal, you said between 65 and 80. Pretrial is around 350. And then state. And what is our state?
I don't have exact figures. It's around, we did have around 120.
Okay. And then am I missing, is there another group from that?
There may be the misdemeanor pretrials. There's
And then of those individual groups, I understand Madison County, we're not legally obligated to hold those prisoners, but we get paid, so we're doing so. Federal, we are legally obligated, or no?
we've signed a contract with them, yes.
So once that contract expires, are we legally obligated?
No.
And that contract is up at the end of the year?
No, it's ongoing. I'd have to check and see.
Okay. And then same question, I guess pretrial, that's our own prisoner, so that's constitutionally we're required to hold those.
Yes.
And then the last group is state. Are we, same question, are we legally obligated to hold state?
Yes, the ones that judges commit here out of Washington County.
Okay. So pretrial and state, we have to hold Madison and then federal depending on our contract term. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the help.
Justice Lemming.
The money from the federal and the state would probably be worth how much if we lost it?
Well, I think this year, say the number's up, it's going to be close to 1.8 million.
On the state?
On the feds.
On feds?
I believe the
1.8?
state will be 1.2, 1.3.
1.2,
That's just,
1.3?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Item 5, the ombudsman report. Dr. Alderman, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Jail Committee. Stan Edelman reporting back. My report tonight is really not asking for any action items. It's informational. Just to let you know, we are up and running, and we have been now. It's our 4th week of operation. First thing I wanted to do is introduce to the committee members our 2 pro bono law student assistants, Lexi Acello to my right and Hannah Andrews to my left. They have been just invaluable in helping us get started. I don't want to reiterate everything in my report. I think if you have the report, have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I just want to emphasize a couple of points here. One is that we are still getting our feet on the ground. We're still working out some kinks. We've managed to see, as of the time I wrote my report, 17 detainees. Now we're kind of up in the 20s, maybe pushing toward 30, and we're starting to see who is a suitable candidate for us to try to find some alternate, safe means of release if there are people who cannot make their bail through regular traditional channels. I have to kind of give you might find it somewhat of a amusing anecdote. We posted a flyer up where the detainees are housed before we started and said, we're about to start seeing people, interviewing people, seeing who we can help get out. The number of detainees who put in requests to see us went from like 50 to 100 to 200, most recently over 300. That's not the amusing part. Over 300, which is more than half of the pretrial detention population. So we're right now, one of the things we have to do is kind of sort through all those requests, which are the ones that are kind of most urgent, most exigent, which are the ones that might benefit from our attention. But I have to say, it came as a shock. We were in business for 1 week. I got a call from Major Denzer at the jail, and preface that by saying all of Sheriff Helder's staff have just been incredibly helpful, going really beyond the call as far as helping us do what we're engaged to do. But Major Denzer called me and said, Stan, you got 300 people and you already have a grievance against you for not having, no good deed goes unpunished. For people who we didn't get a chance to see, we are still working those things out, trying to get a more orderly, systematic way to go through it. And at this point now, we get weekly census reports, which we're able to sift through. And actually, Lexi is the person who's kind of flagging the kind of the most urgent ones for our priorities. So we can only do what we can do in terms of the students being full-time students, in terms of my having full-time teaching obligations. So we've got a certain kind of limit to our capacity. And also, once, as I put in my report, once we have seen people, interviewed them in the jail, and if there are people that we think we can help, then comes the work of the follow-through and the follow-up, trying to get in touch, particularly with the prosecutor's office, with the public defender's office, and trying to see whether it's a realistic possibility of finding, again, an alternate means. When I say alternate means, I mean maybe a bond reduction, maybe ROR, release on recognizance. The Sheriff's Department has standby authority to cite out by citation certain people. So again, we're looking where we think it's a person who is not a significant flight risk, not a significant risk of danger to the community, of finding a way to get those people out responsibly. And I also have to say this, out of the people we've seen so far, this is in my report as well, few, if any, of the people that we've seen thus far are people that I would put anywhere toward the upper end of the scale of risk to public safety, of dangerousness. There are people who, there might be other reasons why we might not be able to get that person out. But the people that we have seen by and large are people, if we're talking about limited, finite capacity, this is for the whole county. Jail space is not an unlimited commodity. And if we're talking about prioritizing as a matter of public safety, those persons who are the highest end risks, those are the people who most need to be in jail, and the persons who can be responsibly released through some alternate mechanisms, those are the persons that we're focusing on. Also, just by way of perspective, and I think I don't want to take up too much more of the committee's time, what we are facing in Washington County is happening all over the country, in other states. I'm teaching, as you know, in Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County, which is significantly larger than Washington County. They are dealing with the exact same problem of overcrowded pretrial detention facilities, and the issues that they're confronting are maybe larger scale, larger numbers, but exactly the same issues we are dealing with, making sure that, again, that limited, that not unlimited resource of jail space, make sure that those are there for the persons who are present the biggest single danger to public safety. I have an article in the magazine. I'll pass this on for the committee members' attention. Again, just to emphasize that we are not alone. We're in the same boat as pretty much every other jurisdiction in the country. Lastly, we have encountered a significant number of people who are held on high bond because they failed to appear. High bond, and this is in my report, plus a long court date, maybe even December, maybe even January. Those people are what I call, for want of a better term, stuck cases. They're persons who aren't going to see the court. They have maybe a hold from another county, so even if they were to bond out, they might not be back in their with their families. And what we're trying to do in some instances is find the way. If they're stuck cases, we're trying to be the WD-40 to try to sort of unstick the cases. Sometimes it means call to probation, call to Benton County where they might have a hold. These are the tough ones. And again, by and large, these are not people that are public enemy number one or even 100. So we've had successes, we have challenges. I am going to be reporting to the committee, at least in writing, every month. I want you all to know kind of what our progress is, what our challenges are, and we won't mince any words on that. But again, the emphasis on jail space being primarily, first and foremost, for people whom we all need to be protected from. And then if we get down to persons who are not dangerous, how can we find a way, a responsible way for those persons to be released into the community? That's where we're about. We have also had very good interaction with you might have heard of the Bail Project. They have bailed out a number of people. They are a fund, nationwide fund, that is able to get people out of jail. They've got money, we don't, so we look to them if we can get a bond reduced. But what we're able to do, and have had just tremendous cooperation, is to deal with the prosecuting attorney's office, Matt Durrett and his staff, the public defender in their office, and of course Sheriff Elder, to try and help us unstick those cases that just kind of resist our efforts. That's pretty much my report. Again, it's in my written report. I'd be happy to answer any questions the members have, and I again thank this committee and the Quorum Court as a whole for their support as well. Thank you,
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tell me about these stuck cases that you call them.
Okay.
Where are the sticking points in
The
those stuck
sticking points are
cases?
primarily, and Lexi and Hannah, you can help me out here, sticking points come up when somebody's got a bond that might not seem that high, or let's say it's a 50,000 bond and we would like to see whether that bond can be reduced. And a lot of times that bond, again, is very understandably. A judge, someone fails to appear, they might have a good excuse or might have a terrible or no excuse.
So
but
you
the-
have to go back to the
The human tendency
judge.
is for the judge to treat those as they should, very seriously. So the bond might go on, and then a detainer from Benton County appears. There might be a probation violation. There might be other factors that would get in the way of someone being able to actually be released. What they might think, what's the point of putting up a bond here if I'm just going to go to the next county?
Well, if if it's a issue of getting a bond reduced,
Yes.
a judge has to sign off on that.
Judge has to sign off
do
on
th-
that?
Do they respond quickly, or are you at the bottom of their pile?
Neither, somewhere in between. Let me explain that. I did have a chance to speak with Judge Lindsay by telephone. We haven't met in person. And what Judge Lindsay told me was that if we want to get a bond reduction, he said the path goes, and I'm not disagreeing at all, goes through the prosecutor's office. So I've spoken, again, with Matt Durick personally and with his assistant, and made suggestions, made recommendations. Sometimes that can be, that can be carried out, and the prosecutor's office certainly is able to, if they make that recommendation, the judge goes along with that. And sometimes maybe there's something that the detainee didn't tell us that might be a little more kind of aggravating than we had thought.
Well, I'm trying to find the sticking points that could maybe be changed.
Yeah.
It sounds like the prosecutor's office is probably, what, a couple of days, and then a judge is a couple of more days? Or are we speaking weeks?
It has even been sometimes shorter than that.
Okay.
Once the prosecutor's office signs up, I think it's within a day or two, that the person is either, again, ROR'd or the bond is reduced. So that part has worked out well.
Okay, well, all these people need to know what it's costing us a day for them to wait and figure out when to respond. That's
Yeah.
all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sure. Other questions? Thank you, sir. We'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Next item 6, is the Washington County Criminal Justice Work Group report. Is there anyone here to give that report? Ms. Moore, I put that on the agenda at your request.
Well, I should have clarified if I was going to be the presenter. I apologize.
You didn't think I was listening.
What? I thought you were listening. I should have confirmed. So I apologize. I don't have anything prepared at this time, but I will report on, I'm Sarah Moore, and I sit along with JP Johnson on the Sheriff's Work Group. We're scheduled to meet again in a couple of weeks. But during our last meeting, we had a very good conversation where we actually, Monique is our moderator that sits on our committee as well, and she's from the NAACP of Northwest Arkansas. And we were able to actually come up with some subcommittees that we're going to start working on, and you might have to help me. I don't know if I have my notes in front of me, what the subcommittees are. So there's 4 subcommittees, and I apologize, we'll get you something on email, but we're going to focus on the pretrial folks, kind of looking at the actual data. There were 1 or 2 other buckets that we were going to look at as well going forward, so we'll meet and be looking at that. So I apologize, I didn't have anything prepared tonight, but I will tell you there will be some reports coming out. There were some of us that have been able to go and sit with additional jurisdictions and gather some more information. So we went recently, Beth Koger and myself, and we sat with in Hot Springs. So we went to Garland County, and so we were able to just talk to them about some of the programs that they're offering. One of the things that is being considered whenever you look at some of the studies as the restorative justice programs. And so, we do have space constraints and maybe some hurdles of what we could offer here, but there are potentially some programs that folks are interested in offering. OGC, as our guidance that's here locally, is familiar with doing some of those programs, as well as Sevier County does some things like addiction services. So we're kind of going down that path with our work group. So thank you.
Next.
Motion we adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was it. Sorry.
Relax. Next is item 7. Item 7 is the public comment period. We've got a 12-minute period for public comment. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there any public comment?
Chairman, I had a question.
Okay,
May I?
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if there was any updates on the study, the committee that was going to study the Washington County criminal justice system study. I hadn't heard anything, and I don't know who to address on.
They published for the RFP has been published.
Okay, so there has been an RFP published. Has there been any kind of bids on that yet?
I have no idea.
Oh, so once it's closed, we'll hear if there's bids. Okay, when is it closed?
The 29th, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Gladys Tiffany from Fayetteville. And thank you for asking that question, JP Andrea, but because that was one of the things I was going to ask. And I'm really curious to know how that's progressing too. But I also wanted to just mention that it's really, really nice to hear some of these things coming out that have now emerged about the things that are happening in the county. And the reports from Sam and from the task force are just really, really positive. And I'm just really, really happy at the way the county's moving. Thank you to every one of you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Anyone else? Without objection, this meeting's adjourned.